In your retail space, you invest in lighting to create a shining customer experience. But maintaining that lighting can be expensive. So whenever you make the decision to upgrade your lighting, you want to go with what's affordable. So you evaluate your options, and the temptation is to go with fastest payback, like you've always done. Sure, there are more advanced lighting solutions nowadays. Integrated LEDs, controls, dynamic lighting, wayfinding, but a quick payback lighting solution will be just fine, and it's cost effective. But is it? Sure, the quick payback options have a lower initial cost, but since they wear out more often, consume more energy, and might even need a store-wide replacement because of changes in trends or codes, they have a higher total cost of ownership than advanced LED systems from Acuity brands. A well-thought-out upgrade lasts longer, consumes less energy, and even lets you adapt to code or trend changes with software updates, not hardware overhauls. So it's not just a bright idea, it's future-proof. It's also an opportunity to invite more customers in. Show off your best products, send the right targeted messages, and create a richer, fuller, and yes, shinier customer experience, all with a lower total cost of ownership. Don't just invest in lighting. Invest in future-proof lighting from Acuity brands. Learn more at acuitybrands.com.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar on overcoming the traditional thinking that can cost retailers millions in lighting costs. My name is April Lisenby, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, just want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, on your screen in front of you, you'll be seeing several widgets or little mini windows on your browser. On the top left is a Q&A widget. Type a question in here at any time and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the session. Below that is a media widget. Not sure what that does, but keep that where that is. Below that, you'll see our speaker's bio and his contact information, so you can connect with him on LinkedIn after the webinar if you'd like. In the center, well, that's where you're going to see the presentation itself. And to the right of that are the survey. If you have to jump off early, please take a moment to answer those 4 questions before you do, and that will help ensure that we can continue to bring you valuable information. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons going from left to right. These are the help, slides, the media player, the Q&A, speaker's bio, the survey, and a share this widget. You can minimize any of the widget windows at any time to get more space on your screen by clicking once on his icon at the bottom, or by clicking on the dash button located in the top right-hand corner of the widget itself. When you're ready to retrieve the widget, simply click on the appropriate icon at the bottom of your screen and it will pop right back up. A recording of this webinar will be available before the end of the day, and we'll shoot you an email tomorrow with the link. Or you can simply use the link you used to get here right now, and you'll be able to access that recording. So that covers the basic webinar housekeeping. Let's get right to it. Today's presenter is Kurt Vogel. Kurt has spent over 27 years in the lighting industry. Most recently, he's been working with some of the nation's largest retailers and implementing various relight programs and technology installations. He's out there every day speaking with energy and construction managers about their biggest concerns with brick and mortar design, technology, and general retail strategy. So he really gets it. It's my pleasure to welcome Kurt Vogel.
Great. Thank you, April. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking your time today. It's good to be here speaking with you. Today, we're going to talk about some critical issues that are relevant to anyone who's involved in providing lighting or determining lighting for retail spaces. We're going to start out by talking about some expected trends in retail and how those might potentially cause some conflict when you start comparing versus traditional dynamics in the space and some of the concerns out there. We're also going to talk about some of the common pitfalls that could potentially cause you quite a bit of heartache down the road if you're not aware of them when converting to LED. And then lastly, we're going to really focus on some opportunities to take advantage of LED conversion to build capabilities into your system that have the potential of turning you into a real hero and really making a difference for your organization. So let's jump right into it. If you spend any time reading articles about where retail is going, and I tend to do that because I'm a kind of a nerd where in that regard, you start hearing a lot of very common themes that are all focused around big changes in the retail space. There's lots of predictions around a general smaller footprint overall, as large retailers move to a more blended model of physical inventory in the space combined with online shopping. So we're going to see a lot more repurposing of space. Some folks are predicting a decline of big box. I'm not so sure that's necessarily accurate, but I think we will see more and more folks going to smaller format stores. Along with that, you're seeing a lot of store within a store, kind of this shared space concept. I think one of the biggest examples was when you started seeing the Sephora stores open up inside the JCPenney in that traditional department store atmosphere. Now you're seeing a lot of the maker movement. Folks are opening little pop-up stores for Etsy or folks like that, and I think we'll see more of that. And that really plays into the need for flexibility in the space that we'll address a little bit later on when we talk about controls. A big emphasis on interactivity. That's going to be the order of the day, and smartphones are probably going to be the medium for that. The new shoppers expect retailers to interact with them. They demand that interactivity and that experience in the space. And along with that, shoppers want that to be personalized. They want to know that the retailer really knows who they are, knows what their needs are, and really offers them a personalized experience. This idea of a seamless experience is also big. You can't open a magazine without seeing an article about omni-channel and a seamless experience. That's happening. That's going to happen. This digital integration is a big trend. But at the end of the day, with all this technology, if it's not making the store more efficient, if it's not helping the associates and the employees just as much as it's improving the experience for the shoppers, it's really not living up to the hype, I don't think. So we're going to see a lot more of this technology really boosting productivity among those folks that are actually working in the space. So one of the quotes I've seen recently is that retail spaces are projected to change more in the next 5 years than they have in the last 50, which really isn't hard because they haven't changed a whole lot in the last 50. You could argue that, but still, I think the next 5 years for retail are going to be very, very exciting as we convert to LED and as we see a lot of these technologies come online. So let's jump right into it and start the conversation. All this change bumps up against continuing concerns. As much as I believe that this revolution in the retail space is going to happen, there are some hard realities. And the main is one of the biggest concerns for a retailer continues to be cost control. Those operational costs are just a critical part of retail. And in fact, this is the results, or some of the results from a study that PricewaterhouseCoopers did that showed pretty conclusively that cost control was probably the single most important factor in determining the profits of a retailer, even more important than the margins they were capturing on the goods they sold. So cost control is a big deal operationally. So it's going to be that context in which we balance all of this change and this implementation of technology. If it's not doing it in a way that's going to allow retailers to control their costs, it's not going to be a success. So you continue to see those efforts try and blend those conflicting dynamics. So how does lighting play into this? What I'd like to do is look at a couple of case studies. One is for a big traditional, warehouse style environment. The other is for a more traditional general merchandise kind of department store environment. But you see a lot of similarity there if you look at the timeline over the last 15 to 20 years. Regardless of the lighting fixture type, we've seen the technology steadily deliver, anywhere from 15 to 25% decrease in wattage, just like clockwork every 3 to 5 years. In the words of an energy manager for a retailer who's been around for a long time, Um, he said for the last 20 years, lighting has been like an ATM for savings projects. We just keep going back to that well. It's been very reliable, whether HID technology as we transition to T5HO, we transition from T12 to T8. Now with LED, we're seeing a huge a jump in efficiency, or rather efficacy, in those environments. The issue with that is we may have reached the limit. When you see those wattages come down from 460 watts all the way to 120 watts, and even more dramatically, in that interior department store style space, coming down to 36 watts, boy, there's not too much more room to go. So let's take a look at that a little more closely and see what that means. I'm making a statement here. This may be the last purely energy-driven or energy payback-driven lighting change we'll ever make, and that's a pretty bold statement. But I think it bears out. If you start looking at the numbers, let's look at that department store. On average, we've come down about 27% every 5 years. If you looked at this over that 15 to 20 year period, we're down to 36 watts. That means to get that next 27% drop, that's only 10 watts. So if you're saving 10 watts a fixture, using the traditional, energy ROI 3-year payback at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, 16 hours a day operation, to get that 27% drop and have it pay for itself on a simple payback, you'd have to buy that solution for about $1.75 a fixture. That's probably going to be pretty tough, especially in an LED world. So we may have reached a point of, diminishing returns or whatever you want to call it, where this next lighting change, when we convert to the highest efficacy LED systems that we can, it might just be the last time we do it, just purely for energy savings. So we better get it right. So it's critical that we look at this LED conversion through a little bit different lens than we've traditionally used when we approach lighting projects up to this point. That simple payback truly is a trap that can lead us into some bad decisions that we might regret, a couple years down the road. So let's look at a little more detailed example of that trap. Today we have existing fluorescent systems, and we're clear on the energy cost to operate those, and there's a cost for relamping. So pretty straightforward. The energy cost, the maintenance cost, and there you see that. So now let's look at a couple of different LED solutions. And here's where we start seeing the graphic evidence of, or the indication of that trap. You look at that middle system, and that is by far the lowest upfront cost. It has comparable energy savings to the much more expensive system. And it looks like, on a simple installed cost basis, that, golly, that's a no-brainer. Why do we do that? When we start looking at it over the long haul, though, and you figure these are systems that are going to be around, 5, 7, 10 years, for a lifetime energy cost, the picture starts looking a little bit different. Now, when you think about a maintenance cost, you think, well, LEDs, there's no maintenance, right? Well, no, that's not the case. With some of the solutions, you are going to bump into maintenance costs, particularly with the LED tubes over a 5 to 10 year lifetime. A retailer's going to have to change those out at some point. So that's something to be aware of. That maintenance factor starts getting really ugly, and it's where the total cost of ownership story and the quick ROI story really, really butts heads. So let's look at why that is. So the LED relight products that have the lowest upfront cost, and here I'm talking about specifically some of the LED tube solutions, they tend to depreciate much more quickly than an integrated LED system, which in a lot of applications, customers say, well, that's just fine. I know my fluorescent lamps depreciated over time. That's fine. And in some settings, that may be okay. For a retailer, that's probably not okay. retailers are very, very concerned about the level of light in their stores. They have to maintain some specified minimum levels. So that light drop off is probably going to lead to a premature replacement of those tubes, which is what you saw in that earlier graph. Here's a typical example of a general merchandise category where we ran the analysis, and you see for the first 3 years the tubes look great. A little bit higher wattage initially, but they're also higher light levels. But you can see that pretty much drops off so that by year 3, it's actually lower light output, and by somewhere around year 4 or 5, you've lost more than 15% of your light, which I think most retailers would tell you is completely unacceptable. So that's going to lead to that additional maintenance expense. That light loss means tube replacement. So that's something you definitely need to keep in mind when evaluating these solutions. That simple energy payback story doesn't often tell the whole story. So what are some other issues we've got going on out there? Well, there's that. We'll skip that. Let's talk about controls. If anyone out there thinks that requirements for controls aren't coming, we need to talk a little further. It is not just a California thing, as a lot of folks think. The retail space has always been the last holdout for controls. We've seen them go into schools, we've seen them go into offices. But for the retail space, it was typically good enough to have a building automation system that turned the lights on in the morning, turn them on full when the store opened. Maybe when the store closes, you turn every other fixture off to give you some energy savings while you're restocking the shelves, and then they'll cut down into nightlight mode. That was a pretty sophisticated control system for a typical retail space. Parking lot lighting is even more of an issue, but we'll address that in a separate webinar. But the bottom line is that whether we're talking about demand response, we're talking about daylighting, talking about occupancy control, talking about that dynamic interactive space, store within a store, the need for controls flexibility is coming. And it's probably coming in the next 3 to 5 years, which is in the window of this relight that we're looking at. So I look at it this. I apologize. So when we evaluate LED systems, they really need to have these smart capabilities built right in. The ability to address controls requirements without wires is a very critical feature to avoid future costs as that environment changes. That ability to deal with lumen loss and also LED replacement issues, that's going to be something that a dumb system is not going to be able to address very well. We talked about lumen loss. What if you had a smart system that could potentially just flatline the light output, do away with lumen depreciation altogether, take some additional energy savings up front, and take depreciation out of the picture altogether? That might be pretty cool. Also, this ability to address all of those dynamic and flexible requirements like beacons and wayfinding and those things. There's going to be a lot more tech in the space, and we'll talk about that. This is probably a way overused analogy, but if we looked at a decision where we only used one criteria, we said, well, we're going to buy a phone and we're just going to evaluate it on the ability to make phone calls and maybe send a text once in a while. The simple payback model would be a no-brainer. You get the flip phone every time, but we don't. We buy smartphones, and why is that? Well, it's because we're taking into account additional functionality and looking at it a little different way. So the question is, what are those other factors that you considered in your payback analysis that said, you know what, I'm going to go with a smartphone because I don't think that flip phone is going to serve me well over time. So let's go back to that question of controls then, and consider the risk of basing an LED conversion choice just based on the needs today without considering what's coming down the road. This is kind of interesting. Let's look at an analysis we recently went through This is a typical retailer's dilemma when they compare two potential LED systems. The first was a dumb LED retrofit that had a way lower initial cost. Just smoked the payback numbers. It was fantastic on paper. Then the realization hit, oh yeah, we've got a bunch of stores out on the West Coast. We're going to have to make those compliant with Title 24 if we go in there and retrofit that store. So he started looking at it and, okay, we can put that dumb LED solution in and it's got a great payback, except that it's going to cost us an extra probably $50 a fixture in labor and materials to run 0 to 10 volt wire to that fixture. And depending upon the system, we're probably going to have to spend another $20 plus labor, to go in and change out the fluorescent ballast and do some other things. So that made those West Coast stores a lot more expensive than they had originally anticipated. Now, compare that against a smart LED system. Yes, it's a higher upfront cost. And yes, it made the payback numbers, it kind of broke the model a little bit relative to the hitting that payback target. But with that requirement for controls, it started looking very, very different because now the wireless capabilities are just built right in. So that standard LED solution has the capability of responding and being Title 24 compliant with some simple, simple gateway and some commissioning done right on the spot. So all of a sudden that incremental cost adder up front doesn't seem like such a big deal. And in fact, the numbers bore it out. 200 fixtures a store, there were about 200 stores. Figured on average it was about $60 a fixture to bring them up to compliance. That's $2.4 million that was not calculated in the ROI. So that would be a pretty expensive miss, had they gone down that route. Now, the integrated solution with wireless built in saved $1.4 million. Yes, there was some additional cost up front, but basically for every dollar they spent to build in the capabilities, it gave them a return of $2.40 in savings. So a pretty dramatic example of how building it in up front puts the hardware in place that pays for itself with savings down the road. And that's an important concept that doesn't get captured in that traditional simple payback model. So we really need to look to the future when we're comparing these systems. So what makes a smart system smart? Well, the beauty of LED is that it's a solid state system and it loves to be controlled. It actually, there's all kinds of things you can do because it is, inherently a chip-driven system. So we can do all sorts of things from a control standpoint. The best integrated LED systems today build that intelligence right into the components. So that gives you the operation you need today and the flexibility to be able to respond to those needs down the road. How efficient are LEDs going to be 3, 5, 7 years from now? I don't think we know. I think we've already blown past some of what we originally thought were limitations. And we're going to see those efficacies continue to increase. The chips get better and better. So wouldn't it be nice to have a system that allows you to upgrade an LED board and have the driver, just automatically say, hey, you're a new board. You don't require as much power, so let me adjust myself accordingly. That's what we're talking about when we talk about a smart system, making it very simple down the road to implement technology updates to be able to do it. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to upgrade your driver or turn on additional features, enable additional applications just by standing on the ground with a tablet and being able to essentially beam it up to the driver? It's pretty cool. That's what we talk about when we say future-proofing. So let's go back to that first slide when we talked about the future of retail. These shoppers that are coming online right now, mainly, the millennials are already there. They're hitting their peak spending years. You've got Generation Z just coming online. They don't want retailers just to interact with them. They expect it. They expect retailers to deliver them a personalized experience, to interact, to give them that experience in the space. And they still love coming into the brick and mortar stores. Even for Generation Z, 80% say it's their preferred method of shopping. So the trick is when they get in the space to engage them. And it's just good business because good shopper engagement ultimately leads to higher revenues, which is the whole point of all this. That's the reason you open the store in the first place. So, when we look at beacons and cameras and Wi-Fi routers and occupancy sensors, all this stuff's coming. It's all going to be necessary to deliver that retail experience. The question is how you, as the person who's responsible for the facilities, are going to install and, more importantly, maintain all this hardware and all of those systems, because it's a lot of hardware. And especially as they proliferate throughout the space, and we look at beacons and we look at Wi-Fi routers, it's a potential maintenance nightmare. So it's something that we need to be really thoughtful about. I mean, just think about all the potential battery changes out there. So that kind of leads the obvious question. Why would we not just build these capabilities right into the light fixtures? It really is the ideal place to deploy this technology. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time digging into the technology. We're actually planning probably next month a detailed webinar specifically on a lot of these technologies and how they work and get into the nuts and bolts. But just for the purposes of today, to talk about where things are headed, when we look at a light fixture, it's just the ideal platform. If you think about it, it always has power. There's no need for any separate batteries or power supplies or additional wiring. You can pull right off the light fixture itself. They're always in place wherever there are people. Wherever there are shoppers, wherever there are employees, there are light fixtures. And they're always in a direct line of sight to those folks. So it really is perfect for the deployment of this technology. And then last, they can be very precise. Light fixtures are usually in a very even grid. They're spaced throughout the space. They have a pretty good density. So from the standpoint of deploying things like beacons or doing things like wayfinding and indoor positioning, it can be incredibly precise when it's based in those light fixtures. So it really is just a wonderful way to implement this without having to incur all those potential maintenance costs and installation issues. So here we see a typical space where that light fixture has multiple technologies going on. It's using visible light communication to engage with that shopper who has their phone in their hand. That gives the capability of giving super precise wayfinding, mapping throughout the store, allowing that customer to navigate right to the shelf and know which side of the aisle they're on, etc. There's also a Bluetooth beacon on board, so you're reaching that person with the phone in the pocket, still providing some basic wayfinding, some heat map capability, some tracking capability, and it gives you that ability to push a notification to that person. Buzz them and say, hey, welcome back, Kurt. Noticed you were looking at this online. It's on sale. It's over here. Or that order you bought online is ready. Go shop. We'll find you with it. So all kinds of capabilities in that connected space, all enabled by the smart LED light fixture. Tremendous opportunities. And here's just some quick examples of the kind of capabilities. This is visible light communication. This is the path of a shopper who has the phone in hand. Again, tremendous accuracy, orientation capabilities, and the ability to guide someone to a product within 6 inches. So just incredible. Even with their phone in their pocket, the Bluetooth, because again, the density of the grid of the light fixtures allows great accuracy even with Bluetooth, much greater than standalone beacons. And again, for the retailer, that analytics capability of being able to heat map to really look at store utilization and see where are my dead spots, where are my hot spots, really critical for a retailer. So all of these capabilities lead to tremendous location accuracy, which translates to a great customer experience. Gives the retailer the ability to really engage with shoppers and at the same time really improve their associate productivity, making them much more efficient as they move through the store, assist customers, locate products, restock shelves, all those things. And then for the retail operations, it just gives analytics capabilities like they've never had. So again, why not? Why would you implement something like this in a bunch of parts and pieces and different hardware solutions when it can be built right into the light fixture? So as we look at this and go back to our future-proofing slide, you might have missed that little gray box at the bottom. It's not just about smart LEDs. These capabilities are essentially built right in. It's just a matter of turning them on and commissioning them. So that's yet another advantage of the smart system, is being able to, even if the retailer's not going to turn it on day one. They may not be ready for that. There may be issues of coordinating it with their marketing functions and things. That's fine. Let's go ahead and build the capability into the system so when it comes time to implement, it's just a matter of turning it on. That can save huge amounts of cost down the road, and it pays for itself up front with the energy savings and the cost avoidance of having controls capabilities. So it really is a win-win. Hardware that pays for itself, software that comes online in the future when you need it. So we're heading down the home stretch. Let's look at a summary of how this all came together and the path to building a true future-proof solution. It all starts with a conversion to LED, and this is where that traditional trap comes into play. If this is where you stop, you have really missed out, and you've missed an opportunity. If we convert to LED and all we end up with is a dumb LED system that we can turn on and off, and it has a fantastic energy payback, and that's about it, we've really, really missed an opportunity to improve the operations of our organization. So that next step is to truly future-proof the system, to go with a smart, integrated LED system at an incremental cost adder that more than pays for itself through additional energy savings, controls flexibility, and the ability to avoid big costs down the road. It truly lowers the lifetime cost of the ownership, as well as just really saving you from a lot of heartache and expense down the road. That enables things like indoor positioning and truly smart systems that now go a step beyond just saving to now you're actually enhancing the revenues of the operation. You're providing features that improve the customer experience, they improve the associate productivity, they allow greater interactivity with customers, and you can really enhance the operations of the organization, which ultimately is all about this omni-channel strategy to build operational heaven, which is where I think we really want to pull all of our retail folks into this world of this new retail experience. And as a facilities person, that's going to make you a hero, to be able to say, hey, I've thought about it, it's all built in. Just tell me how to turn it on, and we'll go. So that's what we mean when we say future-proof, and that's how we'd like to help you avoid the traditional trap and that traditional mindset to be heroic. So with that, I think we may have a couple of poll questions, but immediately after that, we'll jump right in and open it up for questions and answers. So, April?
Great. Thanks, Kurt. You're absolutely right. This last slide I think is a really powerful one that really shows that the first step to a full strategy there, omni-channel strategy, is to convert to LED. So, if you want to see how your current system light stacks up and compared to what's out there these days, go ahead. I'm going to give you guys a second here to click, yes, you want a free lighting assessment of your retail spaces, or if you also want a free financial assessment, comparing what you currently have with maybe what you could have. And those are things that we do for free for anybody who wants them. So I'm going to give you a second here to click yes on either of those, one or both, if you'd like those free assessments. Kind of wish there was a Jeopardy song here, right? All right. So hopefully you got your answers in there. The second thing is, Kurt touched on it slightly, but it is something that we read a lot about in the retail trades. This idea of indoor positioning and helping create an omni-channel strategy. So while we will have a webinar here in the next few months specifically about our ByteLight indoor positioning technology, we want to give you guys a chance while you're here to sign up for that already. I don't have a date yet, but once I do, we'll send that out to you. So if you want to sign up for that indoor positioning webinar, go ahead and click yes. And maybe you're at the point where you want to talk to somebody about piloting an indoor positioning system in your retail space. If you're at that point, go ahead, click yes, and we can contact you on that as well. I'm going to give you a second to put in your answer. And while people are clicking there, just a reminder to go ahead and type in your Q&A set, your questions there in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, so here's, while you guys are typing that in, I had a question, Kurt, really about, it's sort of a basic question. I mean, I'm not a lighting person, but, why haven't most retailers already converted to LED?
Well, I think a lot of it has been, retailers are very, very good purchasers. And, precisely because of that, that slide I talked about with managing operational costs. I think the retailers have taken a wait and see attitude on LED, which has probably, has not done them a disservice as the LED technology has gotten better and better. It's finally hitting a lot of those hurdle rates that retailers have. So I think we're going to see really over the next 12 to 24 months, we'll see some very, very large retailers make this conversion. Today, conversion is probably about 5% in the retail sector. I think we're going to see that change dramatically over the next 24 months. And in fact, you're starting to see announcements. Target stores just announced a massive conversion to the smart LED technology that we're talking about here. So thank you, Target. I think we'll see other large retailers following suit, and after that, I think it will be like the proverbial snowball as folks realize that the technology is here, it's ready, and it's essential to keep the operations to really take advantage of the capabilities.
Yeah. So here's a question. You touched a little bit when you were first introducing the idea of a smart lighting system. You mentioned something about Lumen Depreciation and flattening that out. Can you go into that in greater detail? Maybe quickly explain what Lumen Depreciation is for some of us non-lighting folks, and kind of dig into that idea a little bit more?
Yes, yeah, and in fact, I wish I would have added a slide for that. I didn't know how technical to get, but Lumen Depreciation, essentially any light source, any electrical light source, is going to lose light over time. Even LEDs lose a little bit of light over time. Depending upon the system, some lose a lot more than others. But we're used to that. Fluorescent lamps, HID lamps, they're gonna get dimmer over time. So traditionally, you design towards a median value, which means that initially you're overlighting the space. That also means you're overpaying for electricity because you're pumping more watts into it than you need to. With a smart LED system, that smart driver and smart board that I showed you, that communicating system, has the capability of dialing into a set light level and maintaining it over the life of the fixture. What that means is that as the LEDs start to depreciate, the driver is going to recognize it and start ramping up the power just a little bit. What that means is that up front, you're significantly below the design watts. So you're getting all of your energy savings, you're pushing it up to the front end, if that makes sense. You're kind of front loading the savings. You underdrive them in the beginning so that over time, you're going to stay right on that design light level. So it's a tremendous advantage that LEDs have over fluorescent. We just couldn't do that in the past. Now with a smart system, we can pretty much do away with that idea that light has to depreciate over time, which is great for retail. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at some of these additional questions here, Kurt. I'm going to give you a second here to see which one sort of tickles your fancy, makes sense. We have a few coming in, so please keep them coming in as we keep going.
Okay. Here's a question. Does the in-light system meet the smart LED step you spoke to? What is the order of magnitude cost difference over the LED dumb technology? Boy, that's a really, really good question, and that's a tough one to answer. First, the in-light system, yes, could certainly be part of a smart LED system, especially, for most of the retailers right now, it's all about renovation of the existing space. While there are new stores being built, the vast, vast majority of the opportunity is for relight of the existing space, conversion of those old fluorescent fixtures to LED. In that case, the most cost-effective means of control is going to be wireless. So the new Inlight wireless that's just being launched is fully compatible with everything we talked about today. So that's hopefully that answers that question. We've got one that just popped up. Do studies show that fixture cleaning happens much less or never when light sources do not extinguish? I'm not sure if we have enough data to answer that one yet. That idea that it's put it up and forget it. I think what we find, unfortunately in the retail space is that fixture cleaning in general goes on much less than we anticipate. It's a relative rarity to have folks that regularly clean their light fixtures. So that's why, mechanical design in light fixtures is still a critical part of what we do, regardless of all the technologies. If you don't have a good mechanical design, that eliminates that dust appreciation or at least mitigates it, that's going to continue to be a problem. Good question. The nice thing about the LED solutions is that some of the biggest depreciation we saw out of fluorescent systems, especially with exposed lamps, was dust buildup on the lamp itself. So you'd lose all of that, that light that was radiating through the top of the lamp. In an LED system, obviously, that's not a concern, at least in an integrated LED system. So how can we compare brands of LED lighting to tell how much light will be lost over time? That's a good question. That's the lumen depreciation with LED sources is shown with the L value. So you'll see something like, if you look at an LED tube, it'll say L70 at 50,000 hours. That means at 50,000 hours, that lamp will be at 70% output. So it will have lost 30% of its light, or it'll be 30% dimmer after 50,000 hours. As opposed to, some of the integrated LED systems now are, L96 at 80,000 hours, which means at 80,000 hours out, you've still got 96% of your light. So that L value is a critical number to look at, and that's part of the LED photometric report. It's required for DLC to report that information. So always look for those L values in that hour rating. We'll go to the next question. Does Acuity have any way to convert simple payback to compare versus true payback that includes typical interest rates? We do. The visual program has an economic analysis component that allows you to do anything from very simple paybacks to complex analyses to factor in the effects on the HVAC system, which is a benefit of LED that we didn't even talk about. The difference in cooling costs when folks convert from fluorescent to LED. I'm not sure anybody realized what an efficient space heater a fluorescent light fixture is. So we're seeing folks, have dramatic drops in their air conditioning costs when they convert to LED, which is typically a very good thing. But yeah, I would go to the visual economic calculator, or also contact us. Go to our website and you can ask for more information. We have a whole group of folks that deal with helping with utility rebates, helping with EPACT analysis for the tax benefits and all those things. there's a lot of money out there to assist with LED conversions.
Great. So I think we have time for just one more, but if you please keep them coming, and we'll definitely answer these after the webinar personally. We want to make sure that we get to everybody, but I know I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. So
Yes.
One last one for you, Kurt.
Okay. How convincing, let me see, how do I convince a retail business that doesn't own the location? There's always the response that I'm renting. Boy, that's a tough one. And, it really depends. That's where you have to dig in and find out what the terms of their lease are. Depending upon, I think there's typically 3 different types of leases that a retailer has. And in some cases, it might benefit them to go ahead and make the investment anyway if they think they're going to be in the space for a while. Or you can go directly, I'm thinking of strip centers and folks like that, going directly to that owner, find out who owns the place, and because it's definitely in their best interest to figure out, to be able to get the tax benefits and the rebates. There's, as well as, reducing the operational cost, something that they potentially can either build into the lease or use it to attract tenants, actually.
Yeah, that's a great answer. We actually see that quite a bit, right?
We do.
Well, thank you everybody for your time today. Be on the lookout for the link to the recording of this webinar so you can access it on demand at any time. Again, we'll be sending that email out to you tomorrow morning. And please don't forget to fill out our survey that's located on your screen so we can continue to bring you informative webinar in our ongoing series, especially as we prepare for our indoor positioning webinar. We'll take your feedback to heart. And if you'd like more information about the retail capabilities of Acuity Brands, please feel free to go to our website, acuitybrands.com/retail. And I think that will do it. Thank you again, and have a good day.